Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I'm going to film a review today. Last night I just finished my first Bernard Cornwell, The Archer's Tale, which takes place right before the 100 Years' War. So I had already tried to read Bernard Cornwell's The Fort, and I would like to try it again one day, and I think it was just bad timing on my part, and I was sidetracked by other books, which is always the story. But I really like this. This, like I said, it takes place right before the 100 Years' War, and is about our main character Thomas, who comes from the town of Hookton. And when he was a boy, his town got invaded by, I believe, French soldiers, and his father was murdered, and a religious relic, a lance, was stolen from their, I'm assuming, church. And so Thomas vows to get revenge for his father and his town, and he also, of course, intends to look for the relic. But then eventually, over time, as he gets older, he kind of forgets about it and joins the English army to fight against France. And this was during King Philip. It's in 1343, and let's see, does it say? Well, the King of England was King Edward III. Oh yeah, it does say. And I don't know which Prince Philip it was, or King Philip. Although I think the show that I was watching recently, Nightfall, was the same time period, I think. Which, that's a really good show, by the way. And he, at the time, and so he's fighting in that war. He, of course, is an archer. But then it turns out his destiny finds him, and he's reminded that he has to avenge his father's murder in his town and find the lance. But he doesn't want to get involved in this. Yes, he wants to avenge his father in the town, but he doesn't want to get involved in this bigger thing that's happening with this lance, that it might have ties to the Holy Grail and everything. So, like I said, this is a really good book. The Thomas Cromwell, not Thomas Cromwell, that's the character. Bernard Cornwell definitely knows his stuff when it comes to battles and history. And there is a little bit of a thing on the back of this, and in this book, that's a little note on history, and I believe historical note. And he says that only 2 actions in the book were pure invention, but most of it was based on actual history. Now, of course, I don't know about, it doesn't say anything about the whole, the Countess that is one of the female characters. There's really only 2 female characters, and the rest of them are background female characters. They're, like, maybe meant, But there's 2 female characters. This Countess of Amorica? I don't know if I'm saying it right. I think she's actually English, but she marries a French guy, I think. And then this man he makes friends with, he forms a relationship, Thomas forms a relationship with the guy's daughter. Which, that's the only downside about this book, is that the Countess has a lot of good character development, but the other female character doesn't have much development. And there's a romance between her and Thomas that I was kind of disappointed by, because, I know, granted, this is the first book in a trilogy, and it's also focuses more on this war and Thomas finding the lance and everything. But I just wish, part of me, even though I do wish that the romance and her character were a little more developed, as much as the Countess was. But I guess, like I said, this is the first book in a trilogy, and Cornwell probably didn't want to focus too much on that. And we'll probably get more development of her later, when I finally get to the second book, because my library and the used bookstore I go to does not have the second book in this trilogy. Now, I don't remember if I ever saw it at Books A Million. I did go there recently, but I don't know if I didn't actually look for it. And then there's the other bookstore, so I might look for it there. If not, then maybe I'll get it online, because I do want to read the next book, and I just wish it was at the library. But the writing is pretty, simple. Like, and it's not super graphic, but this is a war book, so there's there's obviously violence and horses getting shot at, which I did not like. Whenever I read books like that, I'm like, forget about the humans. Who cares about the humans? Don't hurt the animals. But and then there's a lot of people getting hurt, like very violently, like a lot of violence, but it's not super graphic. I don't think so. And I like Thomas's character. He was very relatable, likable guy, with typical young 20-something man, or he might be 18, because I always get like ages mixed up on these kinds of these books that are set in like the past, or fantasy that's inspired by the past. So he's relatable. I feel like, and he's impulsive, and he has all these doubts that I think a lot of people would feel the same way. And he's also a bit arrogant, and he gets a bit cocky at times, So I think a lot of young men and women too, I feel like, could definitely relate to him and and get his personality and everything. The other characters were really good. I don't have any strong feelings about them. I liked them. Now I feel like in this book, the antagonist. Well, I feel like there was kind of two antagonists. There was what is his name? Let me see. There's Countess. Oh, Simon Jekyll. I think he was more of the antagonist in this one. He was really annoying and very arrogant, and pretty much a prick. And then there was also another antagonist that isn't introduced till later, and I'm guessing this will be one of these situations where this other antagonist will appear and play a bigger role in books 2 and 3 of this trilogy. Like, he was just introduced in this book. But I kind of wish we had got a little bit more, like maybe Cornwall could have hinted at his existence, not just mentioning there's another threat, and this other person that's a threat. Like, I think maybe we could have, maybe I'm thinking in terms of, not in a book, but like TV, in the world of what's on, shows and stuff, you do get hints of that character that's going to come later, and you just see little shadows or little hints of them, but you don't see them until later. You don't get the full view of them until later. And maybe I'm thinking along in those kinds of terms with this, because I was a little disappointed by that character, that antagonistic character. But again, like I said, maybe Sir Simon Jekyll was more of that, and I love that his name is Jekyll. He's more of the antagonist in this book. And like I said, he was incredibly annoying. I wanted to punch him in the face. But he was a pretty good antagonist. I mean, I definitely hated his guts, which I think that's what, you want. You want to hate them. What else can I say about this? I feel like it's kind of, as far as pacing goes, kind of in the middle, where it can seem slow at times, but then it will pick up the pace. Especially, like I said, this was a really good book. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. If you like historical fiction and you like the medieval time period, then check it out. The author is really good. And he has a lot of books though. He definitely has a lot of books. I haven't read all of them. I've only read 2, and one of them I didn't really read much. So I'm going to try that one maybe next time. Anyway, okay, so I was going to do a separate video but, you know, two separate review videos, but I'm just going to put them, because they both are kind of war books anyway. But the difference with this one is it's more fantasy war, so there's magic involved, particularly gods and using a really unique magic system. And that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I was reading this, I needed to finish this book because I had started a couple years ago. And not that I didn't love it, not that I didn't enjoy it, but it was one of these things where it was a long book. And I'm still working on trying to get through long books a lot faster. You know, not speed reading them and not taking and not appreciating them and taking, some time with them, but more like it can take me years to finish a 500 plus page book. So I want to get better at that. So I picked this book up again. I also was using it for the Asia Readathon hosted by Reads with Cindy, which I've kind of slowed down with that a little bit because this is clearly not Asian related at all. And the other two books I got from the library recently are definitely not Asian related. But anyway, so this, in case you don't know, but most people probably know what this book is about. It's about our main character, Rin, she comes from a little village. Her parents are dead. She lives with, a foster mom and dad, although they don't act very mom and dad-ish. And they own a little shop that she works at, and they decide to marry her off so they don't have to deal with her anymore and they can get money from it. And she decides that that's not what she wants. The last thing she wants is to marry off. She wants to be independent. She wants her freedom and doesn't want to be bound to a man through marriage and be his slave. So she decides to apply to the most prestigious military academy. But of course, it is very hard to get in. She has to pass a particular test. And we wouldn't have a story unless she did pass it, and she does pass it, like I said, and gets to school. Unfortunately, when she gets there, she is met with consternation and prejudice and just people automatically, dismissing her. In fact, when she first gets there, they assume she cheated, and they are constantly judging her because she's darker skinned and she's from the poorer part of the town, and she has not had the training that a lot of the rich kids were able to receive before they came to the military academy. But that makes her motivated to work even harder than most of her peers because she is determined to prove herself. And while she's working harder and studying and training on her own, not just in class, she is seen by one of the professors who is very eccentric, and people don't take him seriously, and he teaches a subject that is very, old and ancient, and no one believes in anymore, and that is lore. And she, realizing that he can teach her things that the other teachers won't teach her, and the things that, she decides to take up his offer to become his student. And he teaches her lore, which is a sort of magic, fantastical version of martial arts. And, but soon, as time passes, she and her peers find themselves in the middle of a war that was coming faster than they could blink. And so the first half of the book is her time in school, in dealing with that, and discovering that she has a connection to this weird magical form of martial arts, and a connection to the gods of this world. And then the second half is this epic war between a very brutal group of people and themselves. So this was really good. I mean, it's probably not everybody's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed it. It is brutal, and there's also, in the magic, I say it's unique because as in they use drugs to tap into the magic and communicate with the gods of this world. And it blurs the lines between power, between like a lot of YA and middle grade when it comes to magic. It's black and white, and there's good versus evil, and there's a clear side to choose, and our heroes usually choose the right and are like very moral and stuff, but not like moral, like not perfect, but just they know what the right decision is, what right form of magic is. Well, this one is more, there's lots of gray areas. It's probably because it's an adult fantasy. But the magic isn't pure. Not just because it involves using drugs. But it's also like, the idea, it comes into question of morality and should you use this magic? Like, the idea of, these kids are in the middle of a war. They are young and vulnerable, and people are dying, and it's brutal. Her friends are dying, and she has a chance to harness this power that could save them all. And it's not, and it's not a clear-cut thing, because, like, her teacher, her mentor is like, no, you don't want to mess with this, because these people are scary. You can't control these gods. Which is probably true, and because they just like power, and there's the whole thing about humans and God versus gods, and the idea of, an all-powerful antagonist being like, or these all-powerful beings being like, oh, I'm not the enemy, I just give you the tools to use, you make the choice. Which is, I imagine, really frustrating to find out, to realize that you're making the choice to do these things. The gods just give you the power to do it. And there's also and this is war. There's no black and white. There's no, the other group are humans too. Although our plot makes it a little easier because their enemy doesn't care about, like, innocence, and they don't think, they just act, and they're told that these people need to be killed, they're the enemy, so they kill them, they don't care. And there's a particularly brutal scene where Rin and her her fellow soldiers go to this village, and it is horrible. Like, there's so much destruction of human life here, and they are in that place, and it gives me, it gives me chills. And there's even mention of babies and children getting killed, and, as someone who is an aunt, who has little ones in her life, it definitely traumatized me just a little bit more than usual, the idea of that. The drunk thing is kind of cool in a way, because it's different. Like, the idea, I mean, not that, I definitely don't think that, I think it's a really cool, like, idea of that's how they, it's not just, and it kind of fits for the fact that this is an adult book, so it's not like, oh, you have magic inside of you, and, it's so, which, actually, I'm reading a book, Magic for Liars, by, I can't remember the author's name at the moment. It's actually downstairs. I'm up in my room right now. I want to say her first name is Samantha Galley or something. I'm probably wrong there. I mean, I think the last name is correct, because, you go by last name when you're looking for the book in a store or a library, but I don't know about the first name. But it also kind of deals with adults, like, is more of an adult book, although the characters are we're kind of it's an adult book, but we're also dealing with high school students. But I imagine it takes the same route. It will take the same route of magic being really a lot more complicated and not so black and white. There's no good and evil, and like that sometimes magic is not all fairy dust and fairy dust and just snapping your fingers and twitch of your nose, and or a flick of a magic wand or something, and it's like, it's a little more complex and a little darker. And it the whole drug thing kind of works, because from what now, obviously I've never tried drugs before, but I do, you hear about how it affects people, and it kind of makes sense, because, like, getting high, you supposedly have these weird images, and it makes you more creative, and in touch with the universe and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of works that's how they tap into magic and connect to the gods of their world. It to me, it kind of fits in a way. Now Rin's character, I know that she's a very unlikable person. I feel like she's very stubborn, impulsive, kind of like Thomas from The Archer's Tale. And also very, very angry person. She's more angry than Thomas. And it does kind of remind me a little bit of A Deadly Education, but for some reason that one annoyed me more than Rin did. Rin wasn't as annoying as, although wasn't as annoying as that main character was in A Deadly Education. I don't know, because I guess, Rin doesn't, well, I wouldn't say that she doesn't whine as much, but, because she does get a little whiny, but I don't know, she wasn't as bad to me, and maybe it helped that that A Deadly Education, we're always inside of that main character's head. Well, in this one, we weren't always inside Rin's head. I mean, we were, and we weren't. Like, there were moments when we could step back from Rin where Arv Kwong explains what's going on in the world. What's going on with the war and everything. But anyway, I also liked the different gods. They kind of had a Chinese zodiac thing going on with all the different gods and stuff. Except for the god that Rin connects with. I don't think that's a zodiac. Last I checked anyway. But they had a monkey god. I can't remember what the other gods were. I just remember the monkey god because the monkey god kind of made an impression with, like, it had the most effect on one of the characters. And like I said, there is discussion of rape at one point in the book, but it's more like the person is telling us, right? You're not there when the character's being raped. She's just telling us and describing it in detail what happens. So I don't know if that would be as effective as if you were there in the moment of the rape, the reader. But there is a rape that is described, so just a trigger warning there. And then, of course, like I said, this is a war book like that one, and I think it's a little more brutal than the Archer's Tale is, I think. And it does not sugarcoat war. Like, I like how it kind of shows that, there's no right or wrong, that, war is brutal and war is messy, and that, people can talk about honor and doing the right thing and stuff, but at the end of the day, sometimes they have to do what is necessary, and it's the idea of, you don't like it, but sometimes you have no options, because you gotta be hard, you gotta be scary, you gotta be brutal in a war. And, as I'm reading it, I'm, getting angry because there's this character that's trying to provoke Rin to connect with the god and to control this god, their god and everything, and she can't do it, and he can't easily, and you find out that rage is a trigger for it, and rage is like the trigger that gets him going. And Rin has to tap into that, and it's kind of complicated, because it's like he's trying to push her buttons to provoke her, and he gets mean. He gets mean with her. And he's also, like I said, he's using drugs to tap into the magic. So it's very much the idea, it's a very confusing situation, because it's like, on the surface, you thinking, oh, this is wrong, and these drugs are destroying him, and, he's being a jerk, almost abusing Rin emotionally. But it's like, is it really right? These people are in the middle of a war. Which actually makes me think of the last season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where Buffy was not, she has the potential slayers are showing up, and she's kind of being mean to them and hard on them, and her and her friends, and there's one point where they go into battle where they get seriously injured and fail to beat their enemy, and they're defeated and miserable, and these are just teenage girls, but they are in the middle of a war with these uber vampires, and they could, and it's not gonna be, they can't be coddled or sugar coated, it's. But even Buffy's friends get mad at her. Her and her sister, her friends and her sister get mad at her, even kick her out of her own house. And it's like, the idea of, yeah, it might hurt their feelings, but they are in the middle of a war. They are soldiers, and shit's gonna happen. Stuff like this will happen, and it's kind of the same. Looks at the same thing where, you want people, you might not like how your general's treating you, but they don't have time to coddle you and be nice. And, like with the Buffy episode, I was mad that they even kicked her out. But then in this, I'm like, I gotta admit, I'm a little like, I don't like him. He's being an ass to you, to Ren and everything. And when I'm reading it, but after I finish reading it and take a step back, I'm like, well, on some level, I can kind of understand. They don't have much of a choice. They gotta be, tough, and they can't sugarcoat things. They have to be, he needs to push her buttons to make her angry. He has to do it because they need her to be that way. So it's a very interesting book that really just makes you really think. It makes you question your morality and think, what would I do in this situation? And of course, most of us will probably not ever be in this kind of situation. Not just the fantasy element and the magic element, but just not all of us, unless we choose to join the military. Not all of us will be in this kind of situation unless something just really weird happens, or and so we will not know what it's like, what the situation is like, and the only way you could ever come close to something like that is reading it in a book and asking yourself, what would I do in this situation? And I feel like you couldn't really know, because I think the only time you would know for sure what you would do is if you're in the moment. Like, you can say that, oh, I would never do that, or I would have the courage to do that, I would be brave to do that, but I don't think anyone can really know for sure, because you don't know how you would react in the kinds of situation that Ren finds herself in. So, like I said, this is kind of a long book, but I feel like once it gets going, once you get into it, I feel like it can be pretty fast-paced. I mean, it took me a while, but, towards that last part, it picked up the pace for me. Also, what's really cool is this. I'm a big fan of this whole taking actual history and putting a fantasy spin on it. I really like that idea because it's a way to learn about the history, and then it can potentially get you interested in it. Like, this is based on, there's the rape of Nanjing, which I guess is I'm wondering if that's a place. I think that's a place. I thought that was that was a name of person, but I think it's a place. And it's what was going on during World War II, which actually I am reading a memoir that takes place around the same time, and then my historical fiction book is on the Korean side of the situation, like what was going on in Korea at the time, when the Japanese were being buttholes and taking things over, which I'm wondering how long that lasted, because I don't know if it's still, I think that, I'm kind of curious how things are going right now in Asian countries. But yeah, this was really good, and I cannot wait to read book 2. I'm hoping I'll get book 2 along with Rule of Wolves for my birthday, which is Monday, actually. Because tomorrow I'm probably going to celebrate it because my mom's working. My mom and dad are working, so they're going to celebrate with me tomorrow. Probably do something with me. but my actual birthday's on Monday, so the sequel to this, along with um, the Rule of Globes, are the top. I moved to the top of my list. But yeah, this was good, and I'm glad I finished it, because then I can jump into the next book, if I get it for my birthday, which I probably won't either way, because I have this thing with series where I don't jump into the next book right away. But anyway, so both these books are really good. This is actual more history, and this is more fiction, but based on history. And I think they're both really good. I mean, I'm not a huge war person. I think, though, I'm more into the whole politics and the actual battle stuff. I think that was the problem with, books like The Things We Carried and Red Badge of Courage, which I read those two, and Red Badge of Courage I thought was okay. Things I Carried were meh. And as much as I respect both those books, I understand why they're both classics, and I understand their importance, but they were kind of boring. And I think it was because there wasn't a lot of action. It was mostly characters trekking through jungles and stuff like that. Or, although Red Badge of Courage, I think it was more, it might have been Civil War. I don't remember which war Red Badge of Courage was. But either way, it was still kind of trekking through wherever they were, the battlefields, or wherever they were fighting. And I don't think there were any battle scenes in either one of those books. I prefer battle scenes, or maybe what's going on in the home front and what the women are dealing with, because the wars that I read about, a lot of times the women are at home, except for, obviously, this one was not the case. There were women soldiers in this one. And, and then when the characters are doing the battles and stuff, I kind of like that. And I also like I said, I like books that do what this book did, which is take actual war and actual history and turn it into a fantasy related thing. I think that's really cool, because it's a way to talk about this event and maybe get people interested in the actual history, but then in I don't know what word to say, an entertaining kind of way. I feel guilty for using the word fun, but I do think this book was kind of fun with, the magic and stuff like that, but it's not, I feel guilty for using the word fun, because it is a war book, and this really happened. Not the magic aspect, but it was, like I said, there's a little part explaining that it's based on actual history, which, yeah, but my book has this in it. I don't know if I'm assuming all the books have that in it, where you get a blurb about the author, and then what inspired her to write this, and book and stuff like that. And I really, it almost makes me feel like I wish I had studied more history, focused a lot more on history than I did, and did a lot more and learn a lot more about it, so I could one day write a fantasy book that's based on history, which I could still, if I wanted to. I mean, there's no stopping me from, there are things that make it, but I could go back to school and study some of these historical topics and stuff, and although I don't know what I would want to study history-wise. But anyway, so I read both those books. They were really, they were really good. And I hope you guys like this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below. See when I post new videos. I hope you're enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!